"Don't say a word," warned the homeless man to the police officer, and this changed the course of the investigation. Sergeant Amanda held the portrait of the missing elderly woman when she felt a rough hand cover her mouth from behind. Her heart raced as a hoarse voice whispered in her ear. "Don't say a word about her being here," murmured the man with desperation in his voice. Amanda tried to turn around, but the firm hand kept her still. The smell of sweat and damp earth filled her nostrils. She knew that scent. It was from someone who had lived on the streets for a long time. "Please, listen to me," the trembling voice continued. "This lady, she didn't disappear. She ran away." The police officer stopped resisting. There was something in the urgency of those words that made her pay attention. Slowly, the hand moved away from her mouth, and she could turn to face the man. William Harris had messy graying hair and worn-out clothes, but his brown eyes shone with an intelligence that surprised Amanda. He must have been around 50, maybe more, and his trembling hands held an old small radio. "Who are you?" she asked quietly, looking around to make sure they were alone in that alley behind Central Park. "William Harris. I've lived here for about 10 years, he replied, pointing to a makeshift structure made of tarps and cardboard under an awning. "And you're looking for Mrs. Margaret, right?" Amanda's blood ran cold. How did that homeless man know the woman's name? The family had reported the disappearance just 3 days ago, and few people had access to the details of the case. "How do you know about Mrs. Margaret?" William Harris took a deep breath and looked around before answering. "Because she's here with me. And before you think I did anything bad to her, let me tell you the truth." Amanda felt her hand instinctively move toward the radio on her uniform, but something in the man's sincere expression made her hesitate. "I've known this lady for 3 years, continued William Harris. "Every day when she passed by here in the park after lunch, she would stop to talk to me. She brought food, sometimes a hot cup of coffee. She was the only person who treated me like a human being." "And where is she now?" "Hidden. But not from you, miss. She's hiding from her own children." William Harris's words echoed in Amanda's mind like an alarm bell. During the 3 days of investigation, something about Mrs. Margaret's family had bothered her. The oldest son, Richard, seemed more interested in his mother's inheritance than in finding her. The daughter, Susan, constantly repeated that her mother was losing her mind. "Explain this better to me," requested Amanda, putting the portrait in her pocket. "Mrs. Margaret showed up here on Monday morning, all hurt and crying," reported William Harris, his voice choking up. "She said her children wanted to put her in a nursing home by force, that they were giving her medicine without her wanting it." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, take a moment to leave a like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Amanda remembered the purple mark she had noticed on Mrs. Margaret's arms in recent photos provided by the family. At the time, Richard explained that his mother had fallen a few times due to mental confusion. "Those marks on her arms," began Amanda. "They were from when they held her to give her the medicine," completed William Harris, his fists clenching. "She showed me. Finger marks, you know, from when they squeezed her to keep her quiet." Anger rose in Amanda's throat. She had seen cases like this before, families who medicated the elderly to make them more manageable, especially when there was money involved. "And why didn't you come to us before?" William Harris laughed bitterly. "Who would believe a homeless man against a rich family? You yourself, if I had shown up at the police station saying that, would have thought I was after money or something worse." His sincerity stung Amanda. Unfortunately, William Harris was right. The prejudice against people experiencing homelessness was real, even within the force. "Where is she now?" asked Amanda, deciding to trust this strange man. "Come with me, but slowly. She startles easily after what she's been through." William Harris led her along a winding path through the trees of the Central Park to a more isolated area. There, hidden behind a dense bush, was another makeshift structure, better cared for than the first. "Mrs. Margaret," he called softly, "there's someone here who needs to speak with you." A fragile voice answered from inside the shelter. "Is it safe, William Harris?" "Yes, ma'am. She's a police officer, but she seems like good people." Slowly, an elderly woman with well-kept white hair appeared at the entrance of the structure. Mrs. Margaret must have been about 70 years old, and despite the simple clothes she wore, she maintained an impressive dignity. Her blue eyes shone with intelligence when she saw Amanda. "Are you Mrs. Margaret Thompson?" asked Amanda gently. "Yes, dear. And you must be looking for me at my children's request," replied the elderly woman, her voice firm and lucid. "I am, ma'am. Your family is very worried." Mrs. Margaret laughed, but there was no joy in the sound. "Worried about the money, you mean?" she said, sitting in a broken plastic chair that William Harris had gotten from somewhere. "My dear, I didn't disappear. I ran away." Amanda crouched in front of the elderly woman to be at her eye level. "Can you tell me what happened?" "Of course I can. My mind is perfectly sound, contrary to what my children have been spreading around." Mrs. Margaret sighed deeply. "It all started when I said I wanted to change my will." "Change it how?" "I wanted to leave a portion of my inheritance to charitable institutions. Richard and Susan went crazy. They started saying I was getting senile, that I didn't know what I was doing anymore." William Harris stepped closer and placed a protective hand on the woman's shoulder. "Tell her about the medicine, Mrs. Margaret." The elderly woman sighed again and rolled up the sleeves of the simple blouse she wore. The purple marks Amanda had seen in the photos were there, still visible, but starting to yellow. "They started putting medicine in my food without me knowing," revealed Mrs. Margaret. "Medicine for anxiety, for sleep. They wanted me to be apathetic, confused. That way it would be easier to have me declared incompetent." "How did you find out?" "My housekeeper, Martha, told me. She's worked for me for 20 years and felt sorry to see me like that. She's the one who told me about the medicine my children gave her to mix into the food." Amanda felt a wave of indignation. The case was taking on much larger proportions than she had imagined. "And do you have proof of this?" Mrs. Margaret looked at William Harris, who nodded encouragingly. "Yes, I do," she said, rummaging in a small bag by her side. "Martha saved some of the medicine for me. And more than that." She pulled an old cell phone from the bag. "I managed to record some of my children's conversations when they thought I was asleep because of the medicine." Amanda's heart raced. If Mrs. Margaret really had evidence, this case would completely change. "Can you show me these recordings?" "I can, but not here." "It's too risky," replied Mrs. Margaret, looking around nervously. "My children have increased the reward for anyone who brings me back. People are looking for me all over the city." "Then how will we do it?" William Harris stepped forward. "There's a safer place, an abandoned warehouse I know. Nobody goes there." Amanda hesitated. Going alone to an isolated place with two people she barely knew went against all safety protocols. On the other hand, if Mrs. Margaret was really being mistreated, she needed immediate protection. "All right," she decided, "but first I need to make a call." "To whom?" asked William Harris suspiciously. "To a social worker I know. She can help us." Amanda took out her cell phone and dialed Dorothy, a retired social worker who occasionally helped the police in cases involving the elderly. "Dorothy, it's Amanda. I need your help with an urgent case," she said when the call connected. "Hi, dear. Go ahead." "It's about Mrs. Margaret Thompson, the missing elderly woman." There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Margaret Thompson. That name sounds familiar," said Dorothy slowly. "Wasn't she the one they tried to commit a few years ago?" Amanda's blood ran cold. "What do you mean?" "There was a case about 3 years ago. An elderly woman with that name who was taken to a psychiatric hospital by her children. She managed to get out because a doctor certified she was lucid, but the family wasn't happy at all." "Are you sure it's the same person?" "I can check my files. If it's her, these children have tried this before." Amanda looked at Mrs. Margaret, who had turned pale upon hearing the part of the conversation she could make out. "Dorothy, can you come here? I'm sure it's the same person, and she's in danger." "Of course. Send me the location and I'll head there now." After ending the call, Amanda turned to Mrs. Margaret. "Do you remember being committed 3 years ago?" Tears began to stream down the elderly woman's face. "Yes, I remember. It was terrible," she whispered. "Terrible. They locked me in a room, said I was having hallucinations. It was Dr. Stevens who saved me. He realized there was nothing wrong with me." And your children? They were furious when I got out. Richard even threatened me. Said that one day they would manage to put me in a place I'd never leave. William Harris clenched his fists. That's why when she showed up here on Monday, I didn't think twice about hiding her. I knew the whole story. How did you know? Asked Amanda. Mrs. Margaret told me at the time. She was very shaken and needed to talk to someone. I was the only person she trusted. The situation was turning out to be much more complex than Amanda had imagined. It wasn't just a confused elderly woman who had gotten lost, but a lucid woman fleeing from abusive family members. While we wait for Dorothy to arrive, can you show me these recordings? Asked Amanda. Mrs. Margaret fumbled with the cell phone with trembling fingers. The cracked screen lit up showing several recorded audio messages. This one was from last week, she said, playing the first file. Richard Thompson's voice filled the morning silence. Susan, Mom is getting too clever. Yesterday she asked why she was feeling dizzy. We have to increase the dose or she'll figure everything out. A woman's voice responded. Richard, if we overdo the medication, it could cause problems. What if she gets sick? Even better. Then we have a reason to commit her for good. Amanda felt her stomach churn. The coldness in the children's voices was frightening. Is there more? She asked. Several, replied Mrs. Margaret, moving to the next recording. This time it was Susan speaking. Richard, I managed to speak with Dr. Williams. He said if we bring Mom in during a crisis, he can sign the papers for involuntary commitment. Perfect. How much does he want? 50,000. Half now, half when she's committed. Amanda couldn't believe what she was hearing. Mrs. Margaret's children were not only medicating her by force, but had also bribed a doctor to commit her illegally. Mrs. Margaret, do you have any idea how many audio files there are? About 10 recordings, all from last week. They thought I was asleep, but the medication was wearing off. William Harris shook his head indignantly. Your own flesh and blood doing this. I can't understand it. It's about money, William Harris, Mrs. Margaret replied sadly. My fortune is considerable. With the inheritance I left them, plus what's in my name, it's almost $20 million. The number impressed Amanda. With so much wealth at stake, it wasn't hard to understand the children's motivation. And that grandson you mentioned? She asked, remembering something Mrs. Margaret had said earlier. The elderly woman's face lit up for the first time. My little grandson Michael, son from my first marriage. He's been living in Germany for 5 years, working as an engineer. She smiled affectionately. He's the only one in the family who truly cares about me. Does he know what's happening? No. Richard and Susan don't let us have contact. They say Michael only cares about the money, but that's not true. Why didn't you try to contact him? They controlled my phone, my computer, everything. It was impossible. William Harris approached. But not anymore, he said, pulling an old cell phone from his pocket. This one has no tracking. If you want to talk to your grandson... Mrs. Margaret looked at the device as if it were a treasure. You would do that for me? Of course, Ma'am. We can try calling him. Amanda watched the scene with emotion. The dedication of that homeless man for a lady he barely knew was touching. William Harris treated Mrs. Margaret with more affection than her own children. But, before anything, we need to get out of here, said Amanda, looking around nervously. If your children are offering a reward, it won't be long before someone comes looking around here. Where are we going? Asked Mrs. Margaret. To a safe place where you can give a full statement and where we can analyze all this evidence, replied Amanda, and where you can talk to your grandson without fear. Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. It really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing. Half an hour later, Dorothy arrived at the meeting point. She was a woman about 60 years old, with graying hair in a bun and prescription glasses that gave her a maternal air. When she saw Mrs. Margaret, her face lit up with recognition. Mrs. Margaret, I knew it was you, exclaimed Dorothy, approaching the elderly woman with affection. How are you feeling? Better now that I have people my own age to talk to, replied Mrs. Margaret with a weak smile. Dorothy helped me a lot during the first hospitalization. And I'll help again, assured Dorothy, looking at Amanda. Where are you thinking of taking her? I know a place, said William Harris hesitantly. "But I don't know if you'll like it." "Where?" asked Amanda. "There's an abandoned church on the outskirts of the city. Father Joseph, who's known me for years, said I can use it when needed. No one will look there." Dorothy nodded. "Good idea. Religious places give a sense of security to those who are traumatized." "Then let's go," decided Amanda. "But how do we get there without drawing attention?" "My car is nearby," said Dorothy. "I can take Mrs. Margaret. William Harris, do you know the way?" "I do. I can walk. It's not far. And I'll go in the patrol car, but by a different route," added Amanda. "We'll meet there in an hour." As they organized the move, Mrs. Margaret pulled William Harris by the arm. "William, are you sure you want to get involved in this? My children are dangerous people when crossed." "Mrs. Margaret, you gave me dignity when everyone treated me like trash," he replied, looking into the elderly woman's eyes. "Now it's my turn to return the favor. But you could get into trouble. Trouble I already have every day. At least now it's for a worthy cause." Amanda observed the conversation between the two and noticed there was a genuine connection there. William Harris wasn't helping Mrs. Margaret out of self-interest, but out of true affection. "It's decided then," she said. "We'll meet at the church in an hour." Dorothy took Mrs. Margaret by the arm with maternal care. "Come, dear. Let's get out of here before someone shows up." After they left, William Harris stayed alone with Amanda for a few minutes. "I need to ask you something," she said. "Why are you doing this? Is it really just gratitude?" William Harris looked at the ground before answering. "You know, miss, when you live on the streets, you see the worst in people every day. People who cross the street to avoid walking near you, people who pretend you don't exist." He raised his eyes. "Mrs. Margaret was the first person in years who called me by my name, who asked how I was doing, who treated me like a human being. And that was enough for you to risk everything for her?" "More than enough. When you have nothing, the little you receive is worth a lot." William Harris's answer touched Amanda deeply. She herself recognized that before that encounter, she probably would have ignored that man if she saw him on the street. "Thank you for telling me the truth," she said. "And thank you for protecting Mrs. Margaret. It's my duty. Now let's hurry before someone shows up." Amanda headed to the patrol car, her mind buzzing with everything she had discovered. In 3 days of official investigation, she hadn't gotten even half the information she had obtained in 2 hours talking with William Harris and Mrs. Margaret. As she drove through the back roads leading to the abandoned church, she called her supervisor, Sergeant Miller. "Miller, it's Amanda. I have news about the Margaret Thompson case." "Oh, good. The family is putting a lot of pressure to resolve this quickly. Did you get any leads?" "I got more than that. I found the lady." "Great. Where was she? Is she okay?" Amanda hesitated. How to explain the situation without sounding crazy? "It's complicated, Sergeant. She didn't disappear. She ran away from the family." "Ran away? What do you mean?" "It seems the children were medicating her by force to declare her incompetent and take control of the inheritance." There was silence on the other end of the line. "Amanda, are you sure about these accusations? It's a respected family with influence in the city. I have recordings, Sergeant, audio of the children planning everything." "Recordings? How did you get that?" "Mrs. Margaret herself recorded the conversations, and she's not senile at all. She's perfectly lucid." "Look, Amanda, this is very serious. If you're right, we're going to have a scandal on our hands. But if you're wrong, I know the risks, Sergeant, but I can't ignore the evidence." "Where are you now?" "In a safe place. Mrs. Margaret was being hidden by a homeless man who noticed her situation." "A homeless man? Amanda, are you sure you're not being deceived?" The question stung Amanda, but she understood her supervisor's concern. "I'm sure the evidence is solid, but I need time to organize everything properly." "All right. You have until tomorrow. But I want a full report and all these supposed pieces of evidence on my desk." "Thank you, Sergeant." Amanda hung up the phone with a knot in her stomach. She knew she was risking her career, but she couldn't abandon Mrs. Margaret now. When she arrived at the abandoned church, she found Dorothy and Mrs. Margaret already settled in a small room at the back of the building. The place was simple but clean, with some broken chairs and a crucifix on the wall. "Has William Harris arrived yet?" asked Amanda. No, but he should be coming, replied Dorothy. I took the opportunity to talk more with Mrs. Margaret about what happened. And? Did you find out something new? Several things. Her children have already sold some properties that were in their mother's name using fake power of attorney documents. Amanda felt the situation become even more serious. What do you mean, fake power of attorney documents? Mrs. Margaret spoke up. They forged my signature on several documents. I have copies stored in a bank account they don't know about. You have a bank account your children don't know about? Yes, I do. I opened it secretly 2 years ago, when I started to suspect their intentions. I put a good amount of money there and all the important documents, including the copies of the fake power of attorney documents. Exactly, and much more. At that moment, William Harris appeared at the living room door, bringing with him an older man with a white beard and simple clothes. Everyone, this is Father Joseph, he introduced. I explained the situation to him, and he wants to help. The priest approached Mrs. Margaret with a gentle smile. My child, I'm very sorry for what you're going through. This house of God is open to protect you for as long as necessary. Thank you, Father, replied Mrs. Margaret, moved. It's been a long time since I felt safe. And now how do we proceed? Asked Dorothy, always practical. Amanda organized her thoughts. First, Mrs. Margaret needs to record a full statement. Then we'll analyze all the evidence she has. And lastly, we'll try to contact her grandson. Talking to Michael is a great idea, agreed Mrs. Margaret. He can help a lot. William Harris took his cell phone out of his pocket. I have his number here. I managed to find it in the phone book yesterday using the international phone directory at the Internet Cafe. How did you get the number? Asked Amanda, surprised. Mrs. Margaret gave me his full name and where he works. I just called his office in Germany and asked for his contact. And they gave it to you just like that. I said it was a family emergency. Germans are serious people. They don't ask questions when it's about family. Mrs. Margaret looked at William Harris with admiration. You did that for me? Of course, ma'am. Family is important. Amanda noticed once again how William Harris treated Mrs. Margaret with genuine affection. To him, she was already family. So shall we call? Suggested Dorothy. Let's, agreed Mrs. Margaret, but her hands were shaking with nervousness. It's been so long since I talked to my grandson. William Harris offered her the cell phone, but Mrs. Margaret hesitated. What if he doesn't believe me? What if he thinks I'm really becoming senile? He will believe you, assured Dorothy. You are lucid, your memories are clear, your arguments make sense. Anyone can see that. And besides, you'll have us here to confirm, added Amanda. Mrs. Margaret took a deep breath and took the device. With trembling fingers, she dialed the international number. The phone rang several times before someone answered. Hello? A young male voice answered in Portuguese with a slight German accent. Michael, Mrs. Margaret's voice broke with emotion. Grandma Margaret? Grandma, is that really you? The young man's joy was evident even from a distance. It's me, my grandson. It's really me. Grandma, I tried to call you so many times. Uncle Richard always said you were sleeping or weren't well enough to talk. I know, dear, that's why I'm calling. I really need your help. What's happening? Are you okay? Mrs. Margaret looked at the people around her, who nodded encouragingly. I'm not okay, Michael. Your uncles are trying to force me into a home to take my money. There was silence on the other end of the line. Grandma, what are you saying? I'm telling the truth, my love. They were putting medicine in my food, hitting me, forging documents. I had to run away from home. My God, is this really serious? It's very serious. And I need you to come to the United States to help me. Grandma, I'll come today. I'll take the first flight I can get. Are you sure? It's an expensive trip. Grandma, you're more important than any money. I'll be there in at most 2 days. Thank you, my dear grandson. Thank you. Where are you now? Are you safe? Mrs. Margaret looked at Amanda, who nodded. I'm with good people who are protecting me, a police officer, a social worker, and a very special friend. Then stay there and don't leave their side. When I get there, we'll figure everything out. All right, dear. Grandma, I love you so much. I always knew something was wrong when Uncle Richard wouldn't let us talk. I love you too, Michael. Now go buy that ticket because I'm waiting for you." After hanging up, Mrs. Margaret cried profusely, but this time they were tears of relief. "He's coming," she said between sobs. "My dear grandson is coming to help me." Dorothy hugged the elderly woman tenderly. "Of course he is. Did you hear how he spoke? That boy truly loves you." "Now we have 2 days to organize everything," said Amanda. "We'll record your statement, gather all the evidence, and prepare a solid case." William Harris approached. "What if her children find out where we are?" "They won't find out," assured Father Joseph. "This church has been abandoned for years. No one comes here." "Even so, it's good to be prepared," said Amanda. "Dorothy, can you stay with Mrs. Margaret tonight? I need to go back to the police station and start preparing the documentation." "Of course. Can William Harris stay too?" "If Mrs. Margaret doesn't mind." "Of course I don't mind," replied the elderly woman. "William Harris is my protection." "Then it's settled," said Amanda. "Tomorrow morning I'll return with equipment to record the formal statement, and we'll review all the evidence Mrs. Margaret has." "Amanda," called Mrs. Margaret as the police officer was heading to the door. "Thank you for believing in me." "You don't need to thank me. It's my duty to protect those in need." "It's not just duty. I saw in your eyes that you truly care." "It's true, I do care." That night Amanda had trouble sleeping. The responsibility of the case weighed on her shoulders. If she was wrong about Mrs. Margaret, her career would be over. But the evidence seemed too solid to ignore. The next morning she returned to the church with recording equipment and a laptop to organize all the evidence. She found Mrs. Margaret more rested, William Harris standing guard at the door, and Dorothy preparing coffee in a thermos she had brought. "How was the night?" asked Amanda. "Peaceful," replied Dorothy. "Mrs. Margaret slept well for the first time in weeks. And today is the day to put everything in order," said the elderly woman with determination. "I want my children to pay for what they've done." "Then let's begin," said Amanda, turning on the equipment. "Mrs. Margaret, I'll need you to tell everything from the beginning, with as much detail as possible." For 2 hours, Mrs. Margaret meticulously recounted everything that had happened in recent months. The attempts to control her life, the forced medications, the threats, the document forgeries. Her memory was impressively clear for someone who supposedly had dementia. "Now let's move to the physical evidence," said Amanda. "You said you have documents stored in a bank account?" "I do. But how do we access them without them finding out?" "You can give me power of attorney," suggested William Harris. "No one will suspect a homeless person going to the bank." "Good idea," agreed Dorothy. "I can accompany him as the responsible social worker." "Perfect," said Amanda. "And the audio recordings? Can we transfer them to my computer?" "We can. William Harris taught me how to use this cell phone better." Dear listener, if you're enjoying the story, please take a moment to like and especially subscribe to the channel. This really helps us who are just starting out. Now continuing, while transferring the audio files, Amanda couldn't stop being shocked by the coldness of the conversations between Richard and Susan. They talked about committing their mother as if they were organizing a trip. "This is enough for a criminal case," she said after listening to all the recordings. "And civil, too," added Dorothy. "They could lose inheritance rights due to mistreatment." "That would be justice," commented Mrs. Margaret, "after everything they've done to me." In the middle of the afternoon, while organizing the documentation, William Harris's phone rang. It was Michael calling from Germany. "Grandma, I managed to get a ticket for tonight. I'll arrive there tomorrow morning." "What joy, my dear grandson," exclaimed Mrs. Margaret. "Grandma, I got some important information here from Germany." "What information?" "I called some contacts in the United States and found out that Uncle Richard is trying to sell your house." "What?" Mrs. Margaret's face paled. "He's saying that you gave authorization before disappearing. There's already an interested buyer." "But that's impossible. I never authorized anything." "I know, Grandma. That's why I'm coming there quickly. We'll stop this." After the call, Mrs. Margaret was visibly shaken. "They're going to sell my house," she murmured. "The house where I raised my children, where I lived with my husband." "They won't sell anything," Amanda assured. "Now that we know, We can file a legal measure to prevent it." "But how? I'm in hiding. I can't appear in public." "Yes, you can," said Dorothy. "With the evidence we have and Michael's support, you can present yourself to the competent authorities." "And if they try to commit me again?" "They can't anymore," explained Amanda. "Now we have proof that all that dementia story was fabricated. Besides, you're under police protection." That night, the group decided it was time to act. Michael would arrive the next morning, and they would present themselves to the authorities together with all the evidence organized. "Only one thing worries me," said William Harris. "What if her children find out that we're going to appear tomorrow and try something?" "Like what?" asked Dorothy. "I don't know. Rich people have many resources when they want." "William Harris is right," agreed Amanda. "Let's take extra precautions tonight." Father Joseph offered to do rounds around the church during the night, and William Harris decided to sleep outside the room where Mrs. Margaret and Dorothy were, keeping guard. Around 2 a.m, William Harris heard strange noises outside the church. He woke Amanda, who had decided to spend the night there too. "There are people outside," he whispered. Amanda grabbed the gun and positioned herself near the window. She could see 2 cars parked on the road with their headlights off. "How did they find out?" she murmured. "I don't know, but they found out. Wake Dorothy and Mrs. Margaret. We'll have to get out of here." A few minutes later, the group was gathered in the back room, planning an emergency exit. "There's a door that leads to the cemetery behind the church," explained Father Joseph. "You can leave without being seen." "And where are we going?" asked Dorothy. "To the police station," decided Amanda. "It's the safest place now." "But isn't it too early?" asked Mrs. Margaret nervously. "Better early than too late," replied William Harris, carrying the bag with the documents. They left through the back door in silence, crossed the old cemetery, and reached Dorothy's car, which was parked on a parallel street. "Everyone get in," whispered Amanda. "Let's leave slowly, without turning on the headlights until we reach the main street." During the drive to the police station, Mrs. Margaret held William Harris's hand tightly. "Thank you for everything," she said quietly. "I don't know how I'll repay you." "You don't need to repay anything, ma'am. I just want you to be well." "But I really do. When all this is over, I want you to live in my house. There's a servant's room that's been empty for years." "Mrs. Margaret, I can't accept that." "Yes, you can. You saved me. It's the least I can do." Amanda heard the conversation through the rearview mirror and smiled. Mrs. Margaret had found a true family in William Harris. When they arrived at the police station, Sergeant Miller was still there, working the night shift. "Amanda, what's going on? It's 3 a.m. "Sergeant, the family found out where we were hiding Mrs. Margaret. We need protection." "How did they find out?" "We don't know, but they showed up at the church where we were." Miller looked at the group, an elegant elderly woman, a social worker, a homeless man, and a determined police officer. "All right, let's talk in my office." During the next hour, Amanda presented all the evidence to Sergeant Miller, the audio recordings, the documents, Mrs. Margaret's recorded testimony. Miller listened to everything with an increasingly serious expression. "This is very serious," he finally said. "If these accusations are true, we're talking about multiple crimes." "They are true," Mrs. Margaret assured. "I can prove every word." "And your grandson is coming today?" "He should be arriving this morning." Miller looked at his watch. It was almost 5 a.m. "All right. We'll place you under official protection. Amanda, prepare all the documentation to present to the prosecutor today." "It's almost all ready, Sergeant." "And you," he addressed Dorothy and William Harris, "will need to give formal statements as witnesses." "No problem," Dorothy replied. "William Harris, too," added William Harris, straightening up in his chair. At 7 a.m, Michael arrived at the airport. Amanda went to pick him up, while Mrs. Margaret waited at the police station under police protection. Michael was a young man of about 30, tall, dark-haired, with glasses and a serious manner that reminded her of his grandmother. When he saw Amanda waiting with a sign with his name, he ran toward her. "Officer Amanda, how is my grandmother?" "She's well and safe, very anxious to see you." During the drive to the police station, Amanda quickly explained the whole situation to Michael. "I always knew something was wrong," he said, clenching his fists. When my grandfather passed away 5 years ago, Uncle Richard completely changed. He became obsessed with money. And why didn't you come back earlier? They always said Grandma was fine, that I didn't need to worry. When I insisted on speaking with her, they made excuses. And now? Now I'm going to take care of my grandmother. And I'm going to make my uncles pay for what they did. When they arrived at the police station, the reunion between grandmother and grandson was emotional. Mrs. Margaret cried so much that William Harris had to bring her water. "My dear grandson," she repeated, hugging Michael. "My dear grandson. Grandma, forgive me for not coming sooner. I should have suspected something. It's not your fault, dear. They're very clever." Michael looked around and saw William Harris leaning against the wall, watching the scene with a discreet smile. "Are you the William Harris who protected my grandmother?" "That's me," he replied somewhat awkwardly. Michael approached and extended his hand. "Thank you so much for taking care of her. I have no words to thank you." "No need to thank me. Your grandmother is a special person. Grandma already told me she offered you a room in her house. I fully support it. Consider yourself part of our family now." William Harris was moved by the young man's words. "Thank you, sir. I'll take good care of your grandmother. I know you will." At 10 in the morning, all the documentation was ready, and the group headed to the district attorney's office. The prosecutor responsible for elder cases, Dr. Johnson, carefully analyzed the evidence. "This is one of the clearest cases of elder abuse I've ever seen," he said after listening to the recordings. "We'll initiate criminal proceedings immediately." "What about the house sale?" asked Michael. "I'll file for an injunction today to suspend any transaction. If there was document forgery, the sale is void." "And Mrs. Margaret, can she return home?" asked Amanda. "She can, but with police protection, and with a restraining order against her children." "They can't come near me?" asked Mrs. Margaret hopefully. "They cannot, and if they try, they'll be arrested on the spot." That afternoon, a court officer accompanied by 2 police officers went to Richard and Susan's house to deliver the restraining orders. The siblings were furious to discover their mother had resurfaced with lawyers and witnesses. "This is outrageous," shouted Richard. "Our mother is senile. These opportunists are taking advantage of her." "Mr. Richard, your mother underwent a medical evaluation this morning and was deemed fully competent," informed the officer. "You are prohibited from approaching her or her residence." "Susan, call our lawyer," ordered Richard. "We'll sue everyone." But the family lawyer, Dr. Williams, upon hearing the recordings that implicated both him and the siblings, decided to abandon the case immediately. "Richard, I can no longer represent you," he said over the phone. "Those recordings incriminate me too." "What recordings?" "Your mother recorded our conversations about the bribe for the hospitalization." "I'm ruined too." Richard hung up angrily and turned to Susan. "The old woman recorded us. She recorded us." "What do you mean recorded?" "She heard our conversations and recorded everything." Susan turned pale. "Then we're finished." "Not yet. We'll hire another lawyer. We'll say she fabricated the recordings." But it was too late. Technical analysis confirmed the authenticity of the recordings, bank documents proved the forgeries, and Mrs. Margaret's testimony, supported by William Harris and Dorothy, was consistent and detailed. A week later, Richard and Susan were indicted for multiple crimes: false imprisonment, elder abuse, document forgery, fraud, and forming a criminal organization. Dr. Williams was also indicted for passive corruption and illegal practice of medicine. Mrs. Margaret returned to her home, accompanied by Michael and William Harris. The servants' room was specially renovated for the new resident, who quickly adapted to life in the big house. "So, William Harris, are you sure you want to work as a caretaker?" asked Mrs. Margaret one morning, having coffee on the porch. "You could just stay here and rest." "Mrs. Margaret, I need to feel useful," he replied, tending to the garden plants. "Taking care of the house, taking care of you, that does me good." "All right, but I want you to consider studying. Michael said he can help you finish high school." "I accept. I've always wanted to study more." Michael, who had decided to stay in the United States for a few months to handle his grandmother's affairs, watched the scene with satisfaction. "Grandma, you saved William Harris just as much as he saved you." "That's true," she agreed. "We saved each other." Amanda visited Mrs. Margaret regularly, having developed a special fondness for the elderly woman. During one of these visits, Mrs. Margaret made an unexpected proposal. "Amanda, have you ever thought about working specifically with elder cases?" "I have, but there are no specialized positions in the department." "What if there was a foundation for elder protection, with resources to hire specialized officers?" "That would be wonderful, but who would fund it?" Mrs. Margaret smiled mysteriously. "I would fund it with part of the inheritance my children will no longer receive." "Mrs. Margaret, that's very generous, but—" "Amanda, you gave me back my dignity, my freedom, my family. It's the least I can do. But this must cost a fortune. I have a fortune, and now I know the best use for it." 6 months later, the Margaret Thompson Foundation for Elder Protection was up and running, with Amanda as security coordinator, Dorothy as head social worker, and a team of professionals dedicated exclusively to cases of abuse against elderly people. William Harris, who had finished high school through a GED program, became an administrative assistant at the foundation, responsible for the initial intake of victims. "Who better than someone who lived on the streets to understand those who are suffering?" explained Mrs. Margaret to anyone who asked about the hiring. Michael decided to move permanently to the United States, opening an engineering office in partnership with a friend. He lived in a house next to his grandmother, visiting her daily. "Grandma, don't you regret losing so much money on the foundation and the renovations?" he asked one Sunday afternoon. "Lose what?" replied Mrs. Margaret, watching William Harris play with the neighbors' children in the garden. "I gained a real family and a purpose for living. No amount of money can buy that." Richard and Susan were each sentenced to 5 years in prison and completely lost their right to the inheritance. The money that would have been theirs was entirely allocated to the foundation. Dr. Williams had his license revoked by the medical board and was sentenced to 3 years in prison. His clinic was closed and he lost all his assets. 2 years after the story began, the Margaret Thompson Foundation had already handled over 200 cases of elder abuse, saving dozens of people from situations similar to what Mrs. Margaret had experienced. On a special afternoon, Mrs. Margaret called the entire foundation team to a meeting at her house. "I want to thank all of you," she said, emotional, "for helping me turn my pain into something good for other people." "Mrs. Margaret, you are the one who deserves gratitude," replied Amanda. "You changed our lives too." "It's true," agreed William Harris. "I was just a hopeless, homeless person. Today I have a home, a job, a family, and a purpose. And I learned that being a police officer is much more than following protocols," added Amanda. "It's about protecting those who really need it. And I discovered that it's never too late to start over," said Dorothy. "I retired from the city, but I found my true calling here." Michael watched everything with a proud smile. "Grandma, you always said that family isn't just about blood. Now I understand what you meant." "Exactly, my dear grandson. Family is who chooses to stand by your side when things get tough." That night, after everyone had left, Mrs. Margaret and William Harris stayed on the porch talking as they did every night. "William Harris, do you regret helping me that day?" "Never, Mrs. Margaret. It was the best day of my life." "Why?" "Because it was the day I discovered I could still be useful to someone, that my life still had value. Your life always had value, William Harris. It was just waiting for the right opportunity to shine. And you? Do you regret running away from home?" Mrs. Margaret looked at the well-kept garden, the house full of life and activity, at the man who had become her son in her heart. "Never. Running away from home led me to my real home." "How so?" "This house only became a real home when you arrived, when Michael came back, when I gained a family that loves me for who I am, not for what I have." "You are a wise woman." "I'm not wise, William Harris. I just learned that sometimes we need to lose everything to find what truly matters." "And what truly matters?" "People who truly love us, a purpose in life, the ability to help others, and most of all, the courage to start over when everything seems lost." William Harris nodded, gazing at the stars in the clear sky. "Mrs. Margaret, may I make a confession?" "Of course." "When you appeared in the park that day asking for help, I almost couldn't believe it. I thought it was some trick, some prank. And what made you change your mind? Your eyes. They had the same sadness I saw in the mirror every day, the sadness of someone who has no one left in the world. And now, what do you see in your eyes? William Harris smiled. Hope, joy, purpose, and most of all, gratitude. Gratitude is the key to everything, William Harris. When we're grateful for what we have, we always have enough. You taught me that. And you taught me that we should never judge people by appearances, that kindness can be found where we least expect it. They stayed silent for a few minutes, appreciating the peace of the night. Mrs. Margaret, may I ask a question? Always. Are you afraid that your children might try something when they get out of prison? Mrs. Margaret thought for a moment before answering. I'm not afraid, William Harris. They've lost all the power they had over me. And besides, now I have a real family protecting me. I will always protect you. I know. And I will always take care of you too. It's strange how life works, isn't it? How so? I was a homeless man who ended up saving a millionaire, and she who had everything ended up saving a man who had nothing. Do you know what that proves, William Harris? What? That we all have something to offer. We all have value. Sometimes we just need the right person to see it. You were that person for me, and you were for me too. At that moment, Michael appeared on the porch with a cup of tea. You're still awake. We were talking about life, replied Mrs. Margaret. About what, specifically? About how the best things happen when we least expect them, said William Harris. That's true, agreed Michael, joining them. Who would have thought I'd come back to the United States because of a crisis and end up finding happiness here? Are you happy here? Asked Mrs. Margaret. Happier than I ever was in Germany. There I had professional success, but here I have family, purpose, and peace. And you don't miss the life you had there? I miss some things, but nothing compares to what I've gained here. What did you gain? Asked William Harris curiously. I got my grandmother back. I gained a father in you. I got the chance to make a difference in other people's lives through the foundation. And you also got a girlfriend, teased Mrs. Margaret with a mischievous smile. Michael blushed. Grandma. What? Amanda is a wonderful girl. It was about time you admitted you're dating. William Harris laughed. I already knew. You two aren't very discreet. We're really not, admitted Michael, and I see no reason to hide it. Amanda is an amazing woman. She brought a lot of joy to your life, observed Mrs. Margaret. She did. And I think we brought joy to her life too. Absolutely. She always tells me how fulfilled she feels with her work at the foundation. And we've become a pretty crazy family, laughed William Harris. A millionaire elderly woman, a former homeless man, a German engineer, and a police officer specialized in elder protection. The best family I could have asked for, said Mrs. Margaret emotionally. Grandma, please stop crying or you'll make me cry too, requested Michael, but he was visibly moved. These are tears of happiness, my dear grandson. Tears of gratitude. Gratitude for what? Asked William Harris. For discovering that family has nothing to do with blood. It has to do with choice, with love, with being there during difficult times. You chose us? Asked William Harris. Yes, I did. And you chose me too. I will always choose you, assured Michael. And I will always choose this family, added William Harris. Mrs. Margaret looked at the two men who had become her sons at heart and felt her chest fill with a love she didn't know she was still capable of feeling. Do you know what makes me happiest? What? The two asked in unison. It's knowing that our story will help other people, that other seniors who are suffering will find hope through the foundation. That's what motivates me to work every day, said William Harris, knowing that I can help someone who is in the situation I was in. And it motivates me to stay in the United States, added Michael, knowing that every case we solve is a life we change. You two make me very proud, said Mrs. Margaret, rising from her chair. Now I'm going to sleep. Tomorrow we have a meeting with the Foundation's team. Good night, Grandma, said Michael, kissing his grandmother's forehead. Good night, Mrs. Margaret, said William Harris, helping her into the house. Good night, my dear boys. After Mrs. Margaret went to her room, Michael and William Harris stayed on the porch a few more minutes. "William Harris, can I ask you a personal question?" "Of course." "Do you miss the life you had before? The freedom to come and go without having to answer to anyone?" William Harris thought for a moment. "Michael, the freedom I had before was the freedom of having nothing to lose. It was the freedom of someone who doesn't matter to anyone." He paused. "The freedom I have now is the freedom to choose to do good, to have people who care about me. That one is much better. And you don't feel pressured to always be grateful, to never complain about anything." "At first, yes. I thought I couldn't have flaws, that I had to be perfect to deserve to be here. But your grandmother taught me that true family accepts our flaws too. She really is wise." "Yes. And you? Don't you miss the independence you had in Germany?" "Sometimes, but I realize that total independence can be synonymous with loneliness. Here I have dependencies, responsibilities, but I also have true connections. It's funny how life teaches us, isn't it?" "Yes. Who would have thought I'd learn so much about family from a man who lived on the streets for years? And who would have thought I'd learn so much about generosity from a family I didn't even know? Grandma is right. The best things happen when we least expect them. And when we are open to receiving." "Exactly." They stayed a few more minutes watching the quiet night, each lost in their own thoughts. "William Harris, thank you for taking care of my grandmother when I wasn't here. Thank you for accepting me as family when I had nothing to offer. You offered a lot. You offered loyalty, protection, genuine love. Those are the most valuable things in the world. Your grandmother taught me that what matters isn't what you have, but who you are. And you proved you are an amazing person. I'm trying to be, every day. You're succeeding." Finally, the two went into the house and went to their respective rooms. William Harris, before sleeping, looked around the room that had become his home and whispered a prayer of gratitude. On the other side of the house, Michael called Amanda. "Hi, honey. How was your shift?" Quiet. "So, how is Mrs. Margaret?" "Good. We were talking about how special our family is." "It really is. You all changed my life, too." "How so?" "You taught me that being a police officer isn't just about following rules. It's about making a difference in people's lives." "You always made a difference, Amanda. You just needed the right opportunity to shine. Just like William Harris. Just like William Harris. And just like Grandma, too. She was always amazing. She was just being prevented from showing it. It's amazing how three such different people became such a close family. Love finds love, right?" "Yes. And tomorrow we'll help more families reunite. Always. Good night, honey." "Good night." In the next room, Mrs. Margaret was writing in her diary, a habit she had resumed after regaining her freedom. "Dear Diary, today marks 2 years since the day I ran away from home. At the time, I thought I was losing everything. In truth, I was gaining everything. I gained a real family, a purpose in life, and the chance to turn my pain into hope for others. William Harris taught me that kindness can come from where we least expect it. Michael taught me that it's never too late to rebuild a relationship. Amanda taught me that there are people willing to fight for justice even when it's hard. And I learned that family is whoever chooses to stand by our side when all seems lost. Today I go to sleep happy, knowing that tomorrow I'll wake up in a house full of love, surrounded by people who truly care about me. If I could go back in time, I would do everything the same, because I had to lose the family. I had to find the family I needed." The next morning, as always, William Harris woke up early to prepare breakfast. It was a routine he had developed, and one that gave him great satisfaction. When Mrs. Margaret came down to the kitchen, she found the table set and the aroma of fresh coffee filling the house. "Good morning, William Harris." "Good morning, Mrs. Margaret. Did you sleep well?" "Very well. And you?" "As always, this house has good energy." "It really does. It's the energy of love." Michael appeared in the kitchen, still in his pajamas, his hair messy. "Good morning, family." "Good morning, my little grandson." "Michael, aren't you going to be late?" asked William Harris, glancing at the clock. "No. Today is Saturday, remember? Family meeting day." "That's right. It's good we don't have any commitments." "Actually, we do have one commitment," said Mrs. Margaret mysteriously. "What?" they both asked. "This afternoon we're going to visit the Foundation's new headquarters. I want to see how the renovation turned out. Grandma, you were already there yesterday, but I want to go with both of you. I want you to see where our story started making a difference in other people's lives." "Good idea," agreed William Harris. "It's going to be emotional." After breakfast, they went out for a walk around the park where everything had begun. The park looked different now, cleaner, with new benches and a community area for seniors that the city had built with a donation from the foundation. "Look how much it's changed," observed Michael. "And look how many people," added Mrs. Margaret, seeing several elderly people chatting on the new benches. William Harris pointed to the spot where his old shelter used to be. "That was my home for almost 10 years. "And do you miss it?" asked Michael. "I miss the simplicity of having no responsibilities, but I don't miss the loneliness, the cold, the uncertainty." "And what else has changed in your life?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "Everything. My self-esteem, my hope, my sense of purpose, but mostly my ability to trust people." "How so?" "When you live on the streets, you learn to distrust everyone. Every act of kindness can be a trap. You taught me that there are still genuinely good people in the world." "You're genuinely good too, William Harris," said Michael. "I'm learning to believe that." They walked a little further and arrived at the location of the Foundation's new headquarters. It was a 3-story building, renovated specifically to serve seniors, with access ramps, an elevator, and rooms for psychological, legal, and social services. "It's amazing how it turned out," said Michael. "Amanda did a wonderful project," commented Mrs. Margaret, "and now we have the capacity to handle twice as many cases." William Harris looked at everything with emotion. To think that all this started with a cry for help in a park. "The biggest changes start with small gestures," philosophized Mrs. Margaret, "and with brave people willing to take action," added Michael. That afternoon, Amanda joined them to visit the new headquarters. She was beaming, talking about the Foundation's new projects. "Mrs. Margaret, we got approval to expand our services to other cities." "Really? How wonderful. In 6 months we'll have centers in 5 more cities in the region. And you'll coordinate everything?" "I will, with Michael's help in administration and William Harris's in direct support for the victims." "William Harris, do you feel prepared for this responsibility?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "I feel honored and prepared too. I took courses, studied, finished high school. So I'm ready. I'm so proud of all of you." "Grandma, you are the inspiration for all of this," said Michael. "No, the inspiration is all the people who are still suffering what I suffered. Our mission is to reach them." "And we will reach them," Amanda assured. "We already have a list of over 100 cases to investigate." 100 cases? Michael was startled. "Unfortunately, the problem is much bigger than we imagined," Amanda explained. "But now we have the structure to really help." "And experience too," added William Harris. "Every case we solve teaches us something new." "The most important thing is that now we have hope," said Mrs. Margaret. "Hope that no elderly person has to go through what I went through." "That is our mission," Amanda agreed. As they walked through the Foundation's facilities, Mrs. Margaret had an idea. "Everyone, how about we organize an official opening celebration?" "What kind of celebration?" asked Michael. "A celebration for all the families that have been helped by the Foundation, to celebrate together the victories we've achieved." "I love the idea," exclaimed Amanda. "It will be emotional to bring everyone together," said William Harris. "Then it's decided. Michael, will you organize it?" "Of course, Grandma. It will be the party of the year." 2 weeks later, the official opening celebration for the new headquarters of the Margaret Thompson Foundation was a landmark event. Over 200 people attended, elderly people who had been helped, their families, Foundation professionals, local authorities, and various supporters. Mrs. Margaret gave a moving speech. "My dear friends, 2 years ago, I was a desperate woman fleeing my own home, not knowing who to trust," she began, her voice firm and clear. "Today I am here surrounded by people who have become my family, celebrating the opening of a space dedicated to protecting other elderly people going through what I went through. The audience applauded warmly. But this foundation is not mine. It is ours. It belongs to every person who had the courage to report abuse, to every professional who chose to dedicate their life to this cause, to every family that reconciled after overcoming difficulties. William Harris, who was on stage beside her, held her hand encouragingly. I want to especially thank 3 people: Amanda, who believed my story when few would; Michael, my dear grandson, who crossed the ocean to help me; and William Harris, who risked everything to protect me when I needed it most. Tears streamed freely down Mrs. Margaret's face. Each of you taught me something about family, about love, about hope. And together, we are proving that it is possible to turn pain into purpose, trauma into strength, loneliness into community. The ovation was thunderous. In the audience, many people were crying emotionally. Our mission now is clear: to ensure no elderly person feels alone, unprotected, or without hope. We will reach every home, every family, every person who needs help, because everyone deserves to grow old with dignity, surrounded by love and respect. When Mrs. Margaret finished her speech, William Harris approached the microphone. "May I say a few words?" "Of course," she said, yielding the microphone. 2 years ago, I was an invisible man. No one saw me. No one cared about me. No one believed I could be useful for anything," began William Harris, his voice choked with emotion. "Mrs. Margaret saw me. She gave me a chance to prove my worth. She gave me back my humanity." He paused to take a deep breath. "Today I know that all of us have value. All of us can make a difference in someone's life. Sometimes all it takes is a gesture, a word, a moment of genuine attention. If there is anyone here who feels invisible, know that you are seen. If there is anyone who thinks they can't help, know that you can. If there is anyone who has lost hope, know that it's always possible to start over." The audience was in absolute silence, hanging on every word. This foundation exists to prove that love overcomes abandonment, that protection overcomes abuse, that unity overcomes loneliness, and each one of you is part of this victory. The applause was even more intense than before. Michael approached the microphone. "As Mrs. Margaret's grandson and administrative coordinator of the foundation, I want to make an announcement," he said with a smile. "We just received confirmation that our first branch will open in 3 months in the neighboring town." The celebration was universal. But this is only the beginning. Our dream is to have a national network for elder protection, and with the support of all of you, we will make it happen. Amanda was the last to speak. "As a police officer, I swore to protect and serve. But it was through this foundation that I discovered the true meaning of those words," she said. "To protect is not just to prevent crimes. It is to give dignity to those who have lost it. It is to restore hope to those who have given up. It is to build bridges where there were walls. And to serve is not just to obey orders. It is to choose to stand by those in need. It is to use our privilege to give voice to those who have been silenced. It is to turn our profession into a mission. All the police officers, social workers, doctors, and lawyers who work with us have chosen to do more than their duty. They have chosen to make a difference." After the speeches, the party continued with music, dancing, and lots of conversation. Families who had been helped by the foundation shared their stories, creating a network of mutual support. Mrs. Margaret circulated among the guests, talking with each person, genuinely interested in their lives. It was clear how fulfilled she felt, seeing so many happy people gathered together. "Mrs. Margaret," called a lady about 80 years old, "you saved my life." "How so, dear?" "My son was also forcing medication on me. When I heard your story, I found the courage to seek help. And what happened? The foundation helped me prove that I was being medicated illegally. My son was forced to stop and go to therapy. Today our relationship is much better." "What joy! That is the greatest reward I could have. You gave me back my autonomy. I will never forget." Similar conversations were happening throughout the party. Each story of overcoming strengthened Mrs. Margaret's conviction about the importance of the work they were doing. Later, when the party was winding down, Father Joseph approached the group. "Mrs. Margaret, I want to thank you for everything you've done for our community." "Father, we are the ones who thank you for giving us shelter when we needed it. It was a privilege, and I want to make a proposal." "What proposal?" "Our church is being renovated. How about we include a space for the foundation services in the back?" "Really? That would be wonderful." "I can get authorization from the diocese. Sacred places should be used to protect those in need." "Father, you are an angel," said William Harris, moved. "We are all each other's angels, my son, when we choose to do good." At the end of the evening, when all the guests had left, the family gathered at Mrs. Margaret's house for a final conversation. "How do you feel?" she asked. "Fulfilled," replied Michael. "Seeing so many people happy because of our work is indescribable." "Useful," said William Harris. "For the first time in my life, I know my existence makes a difference to other people." "Hopeful," added Amanda. "Seeing how many lives we've already changed, I imagine how many more we can still change." "And I feel complete," said Mrs. Margaret. "I turned my pain into purpose, my loneliness into family, my fear into courage." "Grandma, are you proud of what we've built?" asked Michael. "I'm immensely proud. But mostly, I'm grateful." "Grateful for what?" "For discovering that our capacity to do good is limitless when we have the right people by our side." "We are the right people for each other," observed Amanda. "We are a chosen family," agreed William Harris. "And chosen families are the strongest," concluded Mrs. Margaret. That night, each of them slept with the certainty that their lives had meaning, purpose, and direction. The journey that began with a desperate cry for help had turned into a life mission for all of them. The next morning, a sunny Sunday, they gathered again for breakfast. It was a sacred ritual that strengthened the bonds between them. "Everyone, I have news," said Michael. "What news?" asked Mrs. Margaret curiously. "Amanda and I are engaged." The silence lasted only a few seconds before erupting into celebration. "My grandson!" shouted Mrs. Margaret, standing up to hug him. "What joy!" "Congratulations," said William Harris, shaking Michael's hand and kissing Amanda's cheek. "When did you ask?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "Last night, after the party," answered Amanda radiantly. "Michael said he didn't want to wait any longer to make our family official." "And I want you to be our witnesses," added Michael. "Witnesses?" William Harris was startled. "I can be a witness?" "Of course you can. You are my father in my heart." "And I want Mrs. Margaret as my witness," said Amanda. "It would be an honor," answered the emotional elderly woman. "But where will you live?" asked William Harris. "Right here," answered Michael. "We'll build an addition to the house. That way we stay close to Grandma and you." "And close to the foundation headquarters," added Amanda. "This house will become a family complex," laughed Mrs. Margaret. "It will, and I couldn't be happier," said Michael. "When will the wedding be?" asked William Harris. "In 3 months. Enough time to organize everything and to inaugurate the foundation's first branch." "It will be a year full of achievements," observed Mrs. Margaret. "And accomplishments," agreed Amanda. "Do you know what makes me happiest?" said Michael. "What?" everyone asked. "Knowing that our children will grow up in a family like this, with solid values, life purpose, and lots of love." "Children?" Mrs. Margaret widened her eyes. "We're planning," laughed Amanda. "What joy! I'm going to be a great-grandmother, and I'm going to be a step-grandfather," said an emotional William Harris. "They will be very loved children," guaranteed Michael. "And very well educated," added Amanda. "They will learn early about solidarity, justice, and family." "And about gratitude," said Mrs. Margaret. "They will know that everything we have is the result of the love we receive and offer." "Definitely," agreed Michael. At that moment, Amanda's phone rang. It was from the foundation. "Hello," she answered. "Amanda, it's Dorothy. We have an emergency." "What happened?" "A very serious report. a 90-year-old man being held captive by grandchildren who want to sell his house. Where? In the neighboring town. The family got our contact and is desperate. Let's go there now. Prepare the team. Everything is already prepared, just waiting for you to arrive. Amanda hung up and looked at the family. We have work, an urgent case. Let's all go, said Mrs. Margaret, standing up. Grandma, you don't need to. I do need to. This is my life's purpose now. I'm coming too, said William Harris. Maybe I can talk to the elderly man in a way that calms him down. And me too, added Michael. A family that works together, wins together. Then let's go, said Amanda. Another life to save. As they headed to the car, Mrs. Margaret smiled to herself. 2 years ago, she was desperately fleeing her own home. Today, she was rushing to save someone going through the same situation. Life really takes interesting turns, she murmured. Did you say something, Grandma? Asked Michael. I was just thinking how our story connects with everyone we help. How so? Every person we save is a little bit of ourselves being saved again. That's true, agreed William Harris. Every case we solve reminds me how much you all changed my life. And every family we reunite reminds me how special our family is, added Amanda. That's why we do this work with so much love, concluded Michael. Because it's not just work, it's a life mission. When they arrived in the neighboring town, they found a situation very similar to what Mrs. Margaret had experienced. A lucid, elderly man being forcibly medicated by greedy relatives who wanted to sell his property. It's always the same story, sighed Mrs. Margaret. Greed disguised as care. But this time we'll stop it before it's too late, assured Amanda. The rescue work was quick and efficient. Within hours, the elderly man was under protection, the grandchildren were legally removed, and the house sale was suspended. How did you manage to get here so fast? Asked the grateful elderly man. We have experience, replied Mrs. Margaret. I went through the same situation as you, and you got out? I did, with help from these wonderful people who are now my family. So there's hope for me too? There's every hope in the world. And now you have a new family too, the Foundation's family. Thank you. Thank you so much. On the way back, everyone was silent, processing another victory. You know what amazes me the most, said Amanda. What? Asked Michael. How every case we solve makes us even stronger as a family. That's true, agreed William Harris. Working together to help others brings us even closer. It's our shared purpose, observed Mrs. Margaret. What defines us as family isn't just love, but also our common mission. And what a beautiful mission we have, said Michael. The most important one, restoring dignity to those who lost it, hope to those who gave up, family to those left alone. Just like we received, added William Harris. Exactly. We're passing forward what we received. When they got home that night, Mrs. Margaret made another entry in her diary. Today we saved another life. And by saving it, we saved ourselves a little more too. Every person we help strengthens our family, our mission, our purpose. Michael and Amanda are getting married, and soon we'll have more members in this chosen family, and the chain of good keeps growing. I know my time on earth is limited, but I also know we built something that will last forever, a network of love, protection, and hope that goes far beyond the four of us. This gives me a peace I never felt before, the peace of someone who fulfilled their mission and left the world a little better than they found it. 3 months later, the church where Mrs. Margaret had hidden was decorated for Michael and Amanda's wedding. It was a simple wedding but full of meaning. All Foundation employees were present, along with many families they had helped. Mrs. Margaret, as matron of honor, was radiant in a light blue dress that enhanced her eyes. William Harris, as best man, wore the first suit of his life, a gift from the bride and groom. William Harris, are you nervous? Asked Mrs. Margaret while they waited for the ceremony to begin. A little. I've never been a wedding witness before. You'll do perfectly. Just hand over the rings at the right time. That's not what makes me nervous. Then what is it? It's thinking that 2 years ago I was a hopeless, homeless person, and today I'm the witness at my heart son's wedding. It really is moving. Mrs. Margaret, can I make a confession? Always. Sometimes I'm afraid I'll wake up and discover all this was a dream. Mrs. Margaret held his hands tenderly. William Harris, this isn't a dream, this is real life. It's the result of the choices we made, the love we chose to give and receive. I know, but sometimes it seems too good to be true. Life can be good when we choose the right people to share it with. And I chose you. And we chose you. At that moment, the music started and Amanda appeared at the end of the aisle, beautiful in her simple wedding dress, holding a bouquet of flowers from Mrs. Margaret's garden. Michael, who waited at the altar, had tears in his eyes. Beside him, Father Joseph smiled proudly. "Dear brothers and sisters," began the priest, "we are here to celebrate not only the union of Michael and Amanda, but also the strength of the chosen family they built." Mrs. Margaret and William Harris exchanged emotional glances. This family was born from a moment of despair that turned into hope, from a cry for help that became a life mission, from a chance encounter that revealed itself as destiny. Michael, Amanda, you are marrying not only each other but an entire family and a cause that defines you. During the ceremony, when it came time for personal vows, Michael looked at Amanda with immense love. "Amanda, you came into my life at a time of crisis and brought light where there was darkness. I promise to be your companion not only in love, but also in the mission to make the world a better place. I promise to honor our chosen family and work by your side to protect those in need. I promise to love you and everything you represent, courage, justice, and compassion." Amanda, with tears in her eyes, replied, "Michael, you taught me that family is a choice, that love is action, that purpose is fundamental. I promise to be your partner in every battle, your ally in every dream, your family in every moment. I promise to honor Mrs. Margaret as my heart mother-in-law, William Harris as my chosen father-in-law, and continue our mission to protect the elderly until the last day of our lives." When it came time for the rings, William Harris approached with trembling hands but a calm heart. "The rings, please," requested the priest. William Harris handed over the rings and whispered to the couple, "Be happy, you deserve all the happiness in the world." "Thank you, Dad," whispered Michael back. The word Dad made William Harris cry for the first time in years. After the ceremony, the celebration was at Mrs. Margaret's house. The garden was decorated with little lights and flowers, creating a magical atmosphere for the celebration. "This is the most beautiful wedding I've ever seen," said Dorothy, who had become part of the extended family. "It's because there's so much true love involved," replied Mrs. Margaret, "and so many stories of overcoming," added Father Joseph. During the celebration, Michael made an emotional speech. "I want to thank all the people who made this day possible, especially my grandmother, who taught me about courage, to William Harris, who taught me about loyalty, and to Amanda, who taught me about true love. But I want to thank you mainly for one thing, for teaching me that family isn't about DNA, it's about choice. That love isn't about perfection, it's about acceptance. That happiness isn't about having everything, it's about valuing what we have. This family, which began with a homeless man protecting a desperate elderly woman, proves that miracles happen every day when we choose to do good." The celebration continued through the night, with music, dancing, and many stories shared. Every person present had a connection to the family or to the foundation, creating a true community of love and support. Later, when the party was winding down, Mrs. Margaret stepped away to observe everything from a distance. Michael and Amanda were dancing together. William Harris was talking animatedly with other guests. The children were playing in the garden. "What are you thinking about?" asked Dorothy, approaching. "I'm thinking that I made it," replied Mrs. Margaret. "Made what?" "Built something that will last forever. This family, this foundation, this network of love. All of this will continue to exist long after I'm gone." "Mrs. Margaret, don't talk like that. It's not sadness, Dorothy, it's gratitude. It's the peace of someone who has fulfilled their mission. Your mission isn't over yet. The main part is. Now it's just about enjoying the fruits." "And what sweet fruits they are." "The sweetest I could imagine." That night, after everyone had left, the family gathered one last time. "How do you feel as husband and wife?" asked Mrs. Margaret of the newlyweds. "Complete," answered Amanda. "At home," added Michael. "And you, how do you feel about all of this?" Michael asked Mrs. Margaret and William Harris. "Fulfilled," replied Mrs. Margaret. "Seeing you happy is my greatest fulfillment." "And I feel grateful," said William Harris. "Grateful to have lived to see this day." "Only one thing makes me even happier," said Amanda. "What?" everyone asked. "Knowing that our story will help many other people find their own families." "How so?" asked Michael. "The Foundation is writing a book about our story, to show that it's never too late to start over. That family is a choice, that love conquers all." "A book about us?" William Harris was startled. "About us and about all the families we've helped. A collection of stories of overcoming." "And the proceeds from the book?" asked Mrs. Margaret. "They will all go to expanding the Foundation, to reach more cities, to help more people." "What a wonderful idea," said Michael. "So our story becomes an inspiration for others," observed William Harris. "Exactly. It shows that everyone can make a difference in someone's life. And that everyone deserves a second chance in life," added Mrs. Margaret. "Like we all had," concluded Michael. 2 years after the wedding, the Margaret Thompson Foundation was already operating in 15 cities, had handled over 1,000 cases of elder abuse, and had become a national reference in senior protection. The book, Chosen Family, had become a bestseller, inspiring the creation of similar foundations in other states. The stories of overcoming moved readers from all over the country. Michael and Amanda had become parents to twins, Margaret and William Harris, in honor of their heart grandparents. Mrs. Margaret's house had transformed into a true family complex, with additions for everyone. William Harris, now 60 years old, had graduated in social work through a night course sponsored by the Foundation. He was considered one of the best professionals in the country in caring for seniors in vulnerable situations. Mrs. Margaret, at 75 years old, remained active and lucid, chairing the Foundation's board and traveling the country giving lectures on senior rights. "Grandma Margaret," said little 3-year-old William Harris one Sunday afternoon, "tell the story of how you and Grandpa William met." "Again?" laughed Mrs. Margaret, sitting the boy on her lap. "Again." Little Margaret also requested. "All right. Once upon a time there was a very sad lady who needed help, and a very good man who lived in a park." William Harris, the adult, watched the scene from afar, smiling. Seeing Mrs. Margaret telling that story to the children was living proof that everything had been worth it. "What are you thinking about?" asked Michael, approaching. "I'm thinking that our story has become a family legend," replied William Harris. "And what a beautiful legend it is. The children will grow up knowing that family is a choice, that love conquers all, that it's always possible to start over. They'll grow up with the best possible values. And with the best examples." William Harris looked at Mrs. Margaret, who continued telling the story with enthusiasm. "Your grandmother is an incredible woman." "She really is. And you're also an incredible man." "I'm trying to be." "You're succeeding. More than succeeding." That night, as always, Mrs. Margaret made her notes in the diary. "Today the children asked me to tell our story once again, and I realized that our story has become bigger than us. It has become hope for those who lost faith. It has become proof that miracles exist. It has become an example that true love transforms lives. William Harris saved me that day in the park, but I saved him too. Michael gave me back my family, but gained a family too. Amanda gave me protection, but found purpose too. We all saved each other, and now we're saving others. The chain of good never ends, and that gives me a happiness I never imagined possible." The next morning, a special Sunday, the family gathered for breakfast as always, but this time there was a surprise. "Everyone, I have an announcement," said Amanda. "What announcement?" asked Mrs. Margaret curiously. "I'm pregnant again." The celebration was instant and loud. The children didn't quite understand what was happening, but they sensed it was something good. "Another baby!" shouted Mrs. Margaret excitedly. "When is it due?" asked William Harris. "In 7 months," replied Michael, beaming. "We're going to have 3 grandchildren." Mrs. Margaret could hardly contain her joy. "And I'm going to be a grandfather to 3 beautiful children," added William Harris. "Do you know what this means?" said Michael. "What?" everyone asked. "That our family keeps growing, that love keeps multiplying, and that these children will grow up in an even larger and more loving family," observed Amanda. "They'll be lucky," said Mrs. Margaret. "They'll grow up knowing what true love is." "And they'll learn early about the importance of helping others," added William Harris. "This house is going to be even more full of life," laughed Michael. "And of love," completed Amanda. After breakfast, while the children played in the garden under William Harris's watchful eye, Mrs. Margaret and Michael talked on the porch. "Michael, are you happy?" "Happier than I ever dreamed possible, Grandma. Even having left your career in Germany." "Grandma, I didn't leave any career. I found my true career here." "How so?" "There I was just an engineer. Here I am a son, husband, father, coordinator of a foundation that changes lives. Here I have purpose." "And you don't miss the independence you had?" "What independence?" "There I was lonely, not independent. Here I have interdependence, which is much better." "How so, interdependence?" "Here I depend on you and you depend on me. We've created a network of mutual support. That is much richer than total independence." "You've become wise, my little grandson." "I learned from the best teacher." "What teacher?" "Family life. Nothing teaches more about love, patience, generosity, and forgiveness than living in a true family." "And do you consider our family true, even though we're not all blood-related?" "Grandma, this is the truest family I've ever known, because it was chosen, built, earned." "Earned family, I like that expression." "That's what we are, a family earned through much love, much work, and much dedication." That afternoon, an unexpected call came. It was from a national television network wanting to make a documentary about the Margaret Thompson Foundation. "Mrs. Margaret, we would like to tell your story to the entire United States," explained the producer. "Your story is too inspiring to be confined to books." "I don't know," hesitated Mrs. Margaret. "We are simple people." "That's exactly why the story is so powerful. It shows that ordinary people can do extraordinary things." "What do you have in mind?" "A 1-hour documentary, showing how it all began, how the foundation grew, how many lives were saved." "And what if this brings trouble for us?" "On the contrary, it will bring more support for the foundation, more donations, more volunteers, more people wanting to help." Mrs. Margaret looked at William Harris, who was listening to the conversation. "What do you think?" "I think it can help many people," he replied. "If our story inspires one person to help another, it's already worth it." "Michael, Amanda, what do you think?" asked Mrs. Margaret when they arrived. "I think it's a great idea," said Michael. "The more people know about the foundation, the more elders we can help. And the more people know that family is a choice, the more true families can form," added Amanda. "Then it's decided," said Mrs. Margaret to the producer. "We'll do the documentary." 3 months later, the filming began. The television crew was impressed with the family's naturalness and the foundation's structure. "In 30 years of television, I've never seen such a genuine story," commented the director. "You truly live what you preach." "We don't preach anything," replied Mrs. Margaret. "We just live the way we believe is right." "And what way is that?" "With love, respect, solidarity, and gratitude." "As simple as that?" "As simple as that." During the filming, each family member had the opportunity to tell their version of the story. William Harris, initially shy in front of the cameras, opened up when he realized his story could inspire other people in homelessness. "I want those on the street to know that it's always possible to start over," he said, looking directly into the camera. "That everyone has value, everyone can be useful, everyone deserves love and dignity." "And what would you say to people who have prejudice against the homeless?" "I would say that we are people just like you, that we had bad luck, that we went through difficult situations but we kept our humanity intact, and that sometimes we know more about solidarity than those who have everything." Michael also had his opportunity to speak. "I want young people who live far from their family to know that it's always possible to come back home," he said, and that sometimes the family we find is even better than the one we were born into. Don't you feel like you sacrificed your career? On the contrary, I found my true career. Helping people is much more rewarding than any traditional professional success. Amanda was direct in her testimony. I want police officers to know that our mission goes beyond arresting criminals, she stated. Our mission is to protect those in need, give voice to those who have been silenced, make real justice. And for women your age who are still looking for their place in the world, that it's never too late to find purpose, that true love does exist, and that the best things in life happen when we stop searching and start serving. Mrs. Margaret was the last to record her testimony. Her final words became memorable. I want elders to know that you have rights, that you deserve respect, that you should never accept mistreatment, she said firmly, and I want families to know that caring for elders is a privilege, not a burden. What message would you leave for the United States? That family is a choice, that love is action, that everyone can make a difference in someone's life, and that it is never, ever too late to start over. 6 months later, the documentary Chosen Family, the story of the Margaret Thompson Foundation, aired and made a national impact. Within a week, the foundation received over 1,000 calls from people wanting to help or be helped. I can't believe the response, said Amanda, trying to organize the piles of letters that arrived daily. It's because the story touched people's hearts, explained Mrs. Margaret. Everyone has an elderly person in their family. Everyone has felt alone at some point. And everyone dreams of a family like this, added Michael. A family where love is unconditional, completed William Harris. The documentary's response generated invitations for lectures across the country. Mrs. Margaret, at 76 years old, discovered she had a talent for public speaking. I never imagined I'd be a speaker at this age, she commented after a presentation to 500 people in New York. You've always been a speaker, replied William Harris. You just didn't have the right stage. What do you mean? You've always known how to talk about love, family, overcoming. Now you just have a larger audience. That's true. And what a satisfaction to give hope to so many people. Especially because you speak from personal experience. It's not theory, it's real life. Our real life became an inspiration for others. That's surreal. It's the power of truth, Mrs. Margaret. True stories always touch more than fiction. 1 year after the documentary, the Margaret Thompson Foundation became a national organization with centers in 50 cities. Over 5,000 elderly people had been assisted, and hundreds of families had reconciled. The model they created was being replicated in other countries. A similar foundation was created in Canada, another in Australia, and a third was being planned in the United Kingdom. You created an international movement, said a journalist during a press conference. We didn't create any movement, replied Mrs. Margaret. We just showed that love works. The movement already existed in people's hearts. And what's the foundation's next step? To keep growing, keep helping, keep proving that family is a choice, replied Michael. And personally, what are the family's plans? To keep being a family, said Amanda, 7 months pregnant. To keep showing that it's possible to be happy when we have the right people by our side. That night at home, the family reflected on everything that had happened in the last few years. Sometimes I feel like we're living a fairy tale, said Michael. It's not a fairy tale, corrected Mrs. Margaret. It's real life when we choose to do the right things for the right reasons. But admit our story has fairy tale elements, insisted Amanda. What elements? The elderly woman in danger, the unlikely hero, the happy ending. The difference is that in fairy tales the happy ending happens by magic, observed William Harris. In our case, it happened by choice, hard work, and a lot of love. That's true, agreed Michael. We had to fight for every achievement. And keep fighting every day, added Mrs. Margaret. Happiness isn't a destination, it's a journey. And what a wonderful journey it has been, said Amanda. 2 weeks later, Amanda gave birth to a healthy boy named Joseph in honor of the priest who had helped them. Now we have 3 grandchildren, said an emotional Mrs. Margaret, holding the baby in her arms. And an even larger family, added William Harris, watching the older children meet their baby brother. "Grandpa William," said 4-year-old little Margaret, "now there are so many of us." "Yes, there are many of us, my princess, and we'll be even more." "How will we be more?" "Because our family is always open to anyone who needs love. Like you did with me and Grandma Margaret." "Exactly like we did with you." Michael watched the scene with emotion. Her grandmother, at 76 years old, was carrying the newborn grandson while William Harris played with the other children. Amanda rested on the sofa, watching everything with a smile of completeness. "What are you thinking about?" asked Amanda. "I'm thinking that we built something bigger than ourselves." "How so?" "This family, this foundation, this network of love, all of this will continue to exist long after we're no longer here. It's our legacy. It's our legacy of love." "And of hope," added Mrs. Margaret, approaching with the baby. "Every child born into this family carries the story of their grandparents' resilience." "They'll grow up knowing they can overcome any difficulty," said William Harris. "And knowing that true family is the one we choose," added Michael. At that moment the phone rang. It was from the foundation. "Mrs. Margaret, it's urgent," said the voice on the other end. "We just received a very serious report." "What happened?" "A case of abuse against an 80-year-old woman. Her children are trying to force her into a nursing home to sell the house." "Where?" "Right here in the city. The situation is very similar to what you went through." Mrs. Margaret looked at the gathered family, the baby in her arms, the children playing, Michael and Amanda recovering from childbirth. "Let's all go," she said decisively. "Grandma, you just became a great-grandmother. You can rest today," protested Michael. "I can't rest while someone is going through what I went through. But, Michael, this is our mission. Our family grows stronger when we help other families." "Grandma is right," agreed William Harris. "Let's all go. The children can stay with Dorothy." "All right," conceded Michael, "but I'll drive." 2 hours later, they were back at work, saving another life, reuniting another family, proving once again that love conquers all. The elderly woman they rescued, Mrs. Elizabeth, cried when she saw Mrs. Margaret. "You're Mrs. Margaret from television, the woman who created the foundation." "It's me, dear, and I'm here to help you. My children are trying to do the same thing to me that they did to you. But this time it will be different. This time you have an entire family to protect you." "A family?" "Our family. The Foundation's family. The family of everyone who chooses love." Later, when Mrs. Elizabeth was safe and her children legally restrained, she asked a question that deeply touched Mrs. Margaret. "How can I repay everything you've done for me?" "By living your life with dignity. And if one day you find someone who needs help, help them." "That's all?" "That's all. The chain of kindness works that way. Every person we help will help another person. And so it never ends. It never ends. It's our form of immortality." End of story. And now that we've reached the end of this emotional journey, I can't help but ask, what did you think of this story of resilience and love? Like Mrs. Margaret, we can all make choices that transform not only our own lives but also the lives of those around us. Leave in the comments which part of the story moved you the most. Subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories and leave your like if this narrative touched your heart. Your interaction motivates us to continue sharing stories that show love always wins.